Happy Tuesday, bosses. Happy Tuesday. Taco Tuesday, although we're not making tacos today. We actually have an Italian dish, but for those of you if your Tuesdays typically entail more of just eating tacos or nachos or things like that, happy Taco Tuesday to you. I got some coworkers, that's just their tradition, that's their thing. So just wanted to throw that out there. But for everybody else, I hope you're having an amazing day, that you're staying warm and dry because right now in Georgia, the weather is just looking real just nasty right now, just to be honest with you. Like I haven't even been outside today. And normally I try to take at least like some time to be out, but I wanted no part in this weather today. You hear me? So I'm on here. It's been a while, and I actually came on here on Friday, and I wanted to share a few chapters of my book because again, my launch date is on my birthday, so January 23rd. Aquarius in the house. It's on January 23rd, and so I am sharing different chapters of my book that I think will be beneficial. So even if you decide that, hey, I don't want to, order the book or whatever the case is, at least you can get something from it, even with these videos, right? Like, so I just want to share something that I believe that's going to be helpful whether or not you get the book or not. But what I will ask is that if you know someone who may benefit, especially a mom, right? A mom who is an aspiring boss mom, a mom who is already a current boss mom, and they're just trying to find more alignment in their life, I would encourage you and I would ask that you share this information with them. My book launch is going to be a virtual book launch, is going to be on my birthday, January 23rd, and I will be sending out invites for that. My plan is between 6 and 7 o'clock p.m. So if you can make it, I would love for you to join. If not, no love lost. Okay. Like I appreciate you just being a part of this call. And being a part of this session. So for those of you who are joining me live, thank you so much for being a part of this. And even my Instagram people, my Instagram family, thank you so much for joining. You all have been super interactive previously. So thank you so much for that. For those of you who've just been sending like a kind note, like thank you. Like it really means a lot. It really does. Like just sharing the video, it means a lot. And I just appreciate all of you all for your support because let me tell you something. This thing is not easy. And quite frankly, this book almost didn't even happen, y'all. Like it almost didn't happen. Partly because I kept giving myself excuses. And forgive me if you see me keep pushing my hair back because I'm trying to make sure that I can see you all without my hair being all in my face. So but yeah, like the book almost didn't happen. And that was because I kept giving myself excuses, telling myself, oh, I don't have time. I don't have this. This is not the time. I don't have that. Right. Like all these different things that I just didn't have. And even on top of that, I kept telling myself, like I had started my book probably a couple of years ago. I've been like on and off writing this book, telling myself, oh, I'm gonna write a book. I'm gonna write a book. Right. And just did not follow through, did not follow through whatsoever. And finally I told myself, I literally, when I let it come out of my mouth, I was talking to one of my friends, and I shared this on a previous video, but I was talking to one of my friends right after our wine and mastermind summit, and we were on a call. We would just celebrate because she had actually just launched her book as well. And so I'm just congratulating her. I'm like, girl, I'm like, and so she asked me, she said, Robin, when are you going to write this book? Like, what are you waiting on? And that's why it's so good to have good friends that really believe in your vision and that see more in you than you see in yourself. Because honestly, I had been saying I wanted this book, but I was like, let me give it a couple of years. Let me wait till the kids a little bit older, right? Before I decide to actually write this book. But she stopped me and she kind of held me accountable to a certain degree because she was like, what you waiting on? Like, why do you keep putting this book on hold? And so within a matter, so I shared with her, I said, you know what, you're right. I have no reason to keep making these excuses. I need to make space for this book. I just need to make space for it, meaning I need to make more time for this book. And so I promise you, within like probably 10 minutes after having this conversation with her, I received an email from someone around just writing a book, around just some resources and some material that I needed to basically help me write this book. And so all that to say, it's been on since then. Like I knew that it was like divine, almost like divine alignment for me to move forward and write this book. And I felt like it was God just telling me, like, girl, like stop. stop playing, okay? Like, and see, I'm an advocate. Like, if you talk to anybody in the wine and mastermind community, they'll tell you, like, I'm the one to say, do it now. Stop waiting on different circumstances and certain conditions to happen before you actually start showing up for yourself, right? Because I did it so long, and I feel like I wasted so much time, like, just waiting on certain things to happen. And I see so many other people who are doing the same thing. And it's like we miss out on these windows of opportunity because of the fact that we, like, keep second guessing ourselves, or we keep making excuses, or we even surrender to the doubts and the fears that we have. We surrender to it, right? Like, we basically allow the doubts and fears to come into play, and it cripples us. It literally paralyzes us from taking action on things that we need to do. So I'm not going to get on that subject right now, but anybody who knows me knows how I feel about that, because I know, I believe that, and we all know, right? Life is too short. And we ain't got time to be playing games out here, y'all. We have people's lives, especially if you are someone who wants to make a difference, wants to help people, wants to make an impact. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You know that it almost feels as if it's a calling on you to make a difference in the lives of other people. And so for me, I knew I had that calling, and I had been sitting on that calling for a very long time, because I was doing a lot of self comparisons. I was, again, doubting myself, just questioning, is this really something that will help people, right? When the whole time I've been doing things, like, I've been figuring out strategies along the way that has helped me get to where I am now, right? And so that's the reason why I wrote this book. So the reason for my book, Boss Moms Move Differently, this is a guide to help high achieving moms redefine motherhood, reprioritize their well-being, and reinvent their lives. This is why I wrote this book, because I was literally in that place just 5 years ago. Okay. I was literally that person who sat on things. I was that person who made excuses, and basically just said, well, I kept pushing things off, just waiting on the perfect opportunity, or waiting on perfect conditions to happen before I actually stepped up and say things, right? When at the end of the day, nobody's going to be perfect, right? So why not get started now? Okay. So that's not the reason why I'm on here, but hopefully that is something that will resonate with you. And again, I ask that you just share this book with anybody who you know may benefit from it. And even if that's not the case, like, I want you to listen to the video, because I think you're going to find something helpful, even just hearing this video, right? So one of the chapters that I'm talking about, and I keep looking down because I want to refer to my notes again, just so that I don't get off track, because I'm known to start talking and going off. And let me just keep it here. And let me just also mention this, because of the fact that I'm a mom, my goal is to keep things, like, to the point. Okay. That is my goal. Now, I don't always accomplish that goal. Okay. Let's be honest. I don't always accomplish that goal. And if y'all hear a lot of bumping, just know that's my kids upstairs. I don't know what they're doing, but they're running. Listen, I don't know. My son, he's supposed to be, like, under the weather today, but it sounds like he's the loudest one upstairs. But anyway, but my goal is to keep the videos pretty, concise, to the point, because of the fact that we are moms and we have a lot of other responsibilities, right? So I want to give you things, as quickly as possible. Even with this book, like, I really want to try to make sure, and I'm working with the editor now, because I want to make sure that however this book is written, I don't want it to be too much, right? Like, because we don't have that kind of time. So I want it to be where you get exactly what you need. You get the strategies that you need to move forward and to reinvent your life, live the life that you were called to do. But I don't want it taking you months to be able to sit down and read this book, because, sis, I already know what it feels like to be sitting down having to read a book every single day. Like, I love to read, and if I can, I will definitely take that time. But let's just face it, sometimes that's just not the reality. That's not the way things work. So, all right, jumping into the chapter. So the chapter that I'm talking about today is There's Power in the Pivot. And this is one of my favorite chapters. Actually, all of them are my favorite. Let me just be honest. I know I'm biased, but this is, like, by far my favorite chapter in the book, because I talk about different experiences that I have faced along the way. And I don't know. It's just, like, the more I was sitting down, like, reading through this chapter, it just reminded me of where I was at one point, y'all. Like, It reminded me of how dissatisfied I was. It reminded me of how unfulfilled I was. It just reminded me of where I was again just 5 years ago, and to where compared to where I am now, where I am today, and how I'm helping people today. And so I think that's probably why it probably hits me differently, because when you can literally see your life shift just because you made the decision to change your life and not stay in that situation, it just kind of hit different. It just hits different. I don't know. But anyway, so pivot. When I talk about there's power in a pivot, what does that mean? It means, when I refer to it, I mean changing direction, such as, let's say, changing careers. Maybe you've gotten out of a relationship. Maybe you change. Maybe you moved to a different place, or maybe you decided to pursue a new hobby or a new business venture or something like that. Right? It's basically you taking your situation, you're assessing your situation, and you're making a decision. Okay. And I'm going to break down what I mean about making a decision. So during the time when I was, and I still do some HR consulting, but in terms of me being like in a actual, like working for an employer, I do more HR consulting on my own, but working for an employer in HR consulting, I right now what I do is more training, but consulting, during that time I worked with a lot of high performing, a lot of leaders. And one of the things that I found that basically I was doing throughout my career was helping leaders pivot, learn how to pivot. And I believe that that is such an essential skill to have, like knowing when to pivot and knowing how to pivot. Like it's just a great skill to know, because again, some of us stay in positions, we stay in, maybe location, places, we stay in relationships way too long. Okay. And there are so many indicators that are telling us that, hey, like, hey, girl, you need to move. Like, you need to make a decision. You need to move forward. You need to do something different. You need to change. You need to make an adjustment to your life, make a shift to your life. Right. And some of us, we just stay in it, and we wonder, why are we dissatisfied? We wonder, why are we feeling, just that, unfulfilled in what we're doing? Because let's face it, like when we are unfulfilled, when we are dissatisfied in one area, it feeds over into everything else in our lives. And so that's exactly what happened to me. Like it was one of those things where, you can't really pick and choose like how your emotions, how you're going to feel, right? Well, let me take that back. You can choose how you're going to feel, right? Like you can decide how you're going to feel any given day. But if you allow those feelings of, sadness or dissatisfaction to remain, you've made a decision. You've made a decision to stay in that place, right? And so it feeds over into other areas of your life. And so for me, it fed over into my family. Like, because I was sad and unhappy in this job that I was working, it fed over into how I interacted with my family, how I interacted with my kids. And I kept telling, like every year I was telling my husband, I'm like, I think I had an epiphany that this may not be the right thing I should be doing, right? I kept saying it. And my husband's like, you tell me that every year. Like, why you keep repeating yourself? Like, what you gonna do about it? Right? Like, how many of us I can remember, y'all. And I'm talking because I can speak to this, and I was that girl at one point in time. How many of us have been in a relationship where with the guy, especially in our 20s, like early in our 20s, with the guy, we don't know what's going on, right? Like we don't have a clue, but we in a relationship, and you kind of suspect that it's not the best thing for you. You may have, like, for me, my dad was present in my life, and so he was a huge like male figure for me, right? And I've had, again, brothers, four brothers, like, and so what I saw demonstrated with how a man reacted, how he treated his wife, or even your girlfriend, right? Like my expectation was very different, but I spent a lot of time in a relationship that really wasn't serving me, right? Like it, and I knew it was not serving me. I knew it just wasn't going to be a good fit for me. Kind of like when you talk about, like, fitting your hand in a glove. Like I just kept trying to fit my hand in there to make it work, because I just wanted to make it work. I really liked the person, but realistically, I knew it just wasn't a good fit for what I wanted. And that boils down to your values, right? Like those must haves, those things that we know that we really want, but we're just trying to force it. That's what I'm talking about here when I talk about pivoting. Like some of us, we're like, well, I don't understand why, you look back, you have a friend who's in that relationship, right? And you're like, why don't you just get out of the relationship? Like you could easily, you're not happy. You call me every day crying about him doing the same exact thing. I know I got some friends out there that probably can say, yes, Robin, you were calling me. Like I was that girl at one point in time. I'm not even gonna lie. But like someone who just constantly, it's the same drama, the same issues, but you continue to just sit in it. You continue to just take it because you are too afraid to make a pivot. You're too afraid to make a shift. You're too afraid to make a change for many reasons. It's a lot of reasons why you may be afraid, but for some reason you're just afraid, right? Like you're afraid of the unknown. You're afraid of the unexpected. For some people, it may be, well, maybe I'm afraid to leave this guy because I may not find another guy, right? Maybe it's gonna take years before I find him and all this stuff, right? Like all these thoughts, like let's be honest, y'all, like all these thoughts that go through our heads about, just being in relationships, even for jobs, right? Some of us, we may decide that, and again, this was me. I don't know about leaving this job. I don't know if I should leave because what if I have a hard time finding a new one? Now, one thing I will say is that I do recommend that you have a job before you leave your current job. I do believe you have some kind of backup plan before you do that. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want you just, leaving things cold turkey. And I would expect that if you are probably listening to me, you probably already know that. But I'm just sharing for anybody else. Maybe if you're just kind of, you're scrolling through, you just, maybe you just want to hear a different perspective. But anyway, but that's what I'm talking about when I refer to pivoting. It's basically making an adjustment, making a pivot when maybe you just feel the urge that something needs to change, right? Something needs to change, or something just needs to be done differently. Okay. Um, so when you pivot, one thing I want to note here is that it doesn't mean that you have to just stop things cold turkey. So, like I said, like in the situation of like the job, right? Like I'm not saying that just because you are dissatisfied with your job, or maybe you've been discriminated against on your job, I'm not saying that just because you don't like it or you're not happy that you need to just cold turkey leave, right? But what I am saying is that sometimes when you're in a pivot position, what it calls for you to do is to stop, take a pause, and identify if it's something that you need to start, stop, or continue. That's kind of the way I look at it. I look at it as when you're in a pivot position, and I'm going to talk about pivot position shortly, but you got to think about whether or not you're going to start something, meaning starting something new. You're going to stop it. You're going to completely stop it. You're going to leave that job. You're going to leave that relationship, leave that place where you're living, right? Or something that you're going to continue. Maybe you've paused for a second. Maybe you've evaluated the situation and you feel that maybe you need to continue on with this course, right? Maybe it's just some tweaks here and there, maybe that you can make, or maybe it's certain people that you need to get connected with, but you still feel that maybe you need to change up the ingredients to the recipe, right? I talked about this in my first chapter of my book where I talked about the cake um, demonstration, my cream cheese pound cake. But sometimes it takes us changing up the ingredients to the recipe, right? Sometimes it takes us, just creating a whole new recipe, that may be the case as well. But thinking about it from that standpoint. So at the end of the day, what we're trying to accomplish here is we want to find alignment in the things that we value, right? So we don't want to be in a place when we're stuck. And oftentimes, and let me kind of talk through ways in which you would probably need to identify whether or not it's time to pivot. So feeling stuck is definitely the number one thing I would say. And oftentimes, what does it mean? Like, what does it really feel like when you're stuck? It feels like you're not happy, you're dissatisfied, and it's not working. Like it's something is just not working. Again, I'm talking about the hand fitting in that glove, right? Like the shoe, the foot fitting in that shoe, right? It's something feels off. Okay. It's that tugging for some of us. Sometimes it's a tugging in our spirit. I get that a lot, right? You feel something is off and you need to make a change. You're not quite sure. And where it gets to a place where you're feeling stuck is oftentimes you're in it and you just continue to do it. You just like, I don't even know how. I don't even know how to start. I don't even know who to contact. How do I move forward? What do I need to do? I just feel stuck. I feel like I'm just stuck. I feel like I'm stuck in this job. I don't know what to do. Right. And that would be I would say for me, the number one reason I would say when you probably need to identify there may be a need to pivot in that moment. The next thing is you are not progressing towards your goals, or you may have lost sight of your goals. So sometimes you're doing stuff, right? Let's say, you're in a process of putting together a project for your business or for your job, and you're just running around contacting everybody. And then you sit down and you say, wait a minute, what are we really doing? Like, what are we trying to accomplish? You got all this stuff going on, but have you checked in with the stakeholders? Have you really checked in with the people who really need your customers? Have you checked in with them to identify, like, what is the end game here? Sometimes we can get lost with that vision. Sometimes we can get lost um, just on that course, right? Because there's so many things that are happening, so many things that are being thrown at us, even especially when you're a mom, right? Like, you got so many different things coming at you in different from different directions. And so sometimes it's easy to lose course of where you're trying to go. Okay. And the last thing is you have a new opportunity that's been presented to you. So let's say a new opportunity exists. Going back to my example about me writing this book. Okay. So, like, again, this was not on my radar. I had written it out. Don't get me wrong. I had written it out. I had written it out as a vision of mine. This was a goal that I really wanted to accomplish at some point, but it wasn't as concrete as, like, January 23rd, 2023. Y'all, it was not to that extent. And so it goes back to, I was presented with an opportunity to write this book that I have been praying about, I have been writing about for years. I have been talking about for years, right, to some of my close friends. And when the opportunity came, when that window of opportunity came, that was the moment where I had to stop and assess. I had to stop and say, okay, I have these other goals set for myself, right? I have these other plans in mind that I want to accomplish for my business or for my family. So now it's time for me to potentially make a shift, because now I got to realign, like writing a book, going through the editing process, going through back and forth with the designer to get your cover together. Like, all of these different dynamics that it takes to actually write a book, it takes time, right? And so for me, I had to figure out, like, where am I going to bake this time into? Like, what does this really look like? And so for me, that was the point where a pivot was necessary, right? A pivot in terms of changing my schedule throughout the day, coordinating some things with my husband just to figure out, like, what is this really going to look like when I do my lunch, when I do my launch, when I do my book tours? Like, what is this really going to look like? And so I had to sit down and do all of that. That was a part of my pivot process. And so I want you to start thinking about ways, or let's say situations. Maybe you're in a particular situation right now, and there may be a need for you to pivot, right? Again, maybe you feel stuck. Maybe you feel as if you just gotten, like, you really don't know what your goals are. You're just kind of living by the day. You don't really know where you're going or how you're going to get there, and maybe you just need to stop and pause for a second. Okay. All of us do that at some point in our life. For some of you, it may be a new opportunity that may have been presented to you. Maybe you came across an ad. Maybe you came across someone who has some type of program and they're offering, and you've been eyeing this person for a while. And I know that was me, which is why I selected the coach that I have now. I have been watching her for years. And I finally made the decision, you know what? Like, this is a good window of opportunity for me to move forward in writing my book and accomplishing some other things that I want to accomplish for myself, for my family, and for my business. Okay. And so I made the decision to invest in a coach. I did the same thing. I invested in masterminds. Like, when I saw that window of opportunity happen, I invested in myself. And so sometimes with this pivot process, sometimes it does mean you may need to invest into the next steps to help you to get from where you are to where you want to be. Sometimes it takes that, y'all, and we got to be willing to invest in ourselves along the way, right? Because there may be people who may be further ahead than where you are that may be able to give you the knowledge and the insight to help you get out of that rut, to help you get unstuck, right? And so I want you to think about that. And again, when you're in that pivot position, For those of you who are familiar with, I actually share this in my book, and I'm going to share this, but again, I didn't want to go over too much time today, but I do want to share a point that I make in the book about if you play basketball, for example, and some of you, you're probably familiar with the pivot position. Like I actually used to play basketball, y'all, and some of you may not know that, but I was like a time girl at heart, y'all. I played like all the sports, okay? Like I was right there playing basketball, football, everything you could think of, wrestling with the guys, okay? That was my thing. Um, and all that to say, anyway, if you're familiar with basketball and you're probably aware of the pivot position. So oftentimes when you're in a pivot position, you are in possession of the ball. You have the ball and you have about, I believe, 5 seconds. Don't get me wrong, 3 to 5 seconds. Okay, I believe it's 5 seconds. But you have 5 seconds to make a decision. You're either gonna dribble, pass, or shoot the ball within that 5 seconds, right? And so that's what I want you to kind of think about. Think about there are places you're in certain positions where maybe you feel an urge to do something different. Maybe you feel an urge that something needs to change. You have some level of resistance that maybe you need to get out that situation, or maybe you need to start something new or start something different. That's what I'm talking about with the pivoting, right? And so when I think about that, when you're on the basketball court, you have the ball, you're in a pivot position, you got to make a decision within 5 seconds, right? Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to dribble the ball? Are you going to pass it? Or are you going to shoot it? Oftentimes, when you're dribbling the ball, that's basically your way of strategically thinking through. You're strategically thinking through what are my next steps in this process, right? But you don't want to dribble too long, because that goes back to some of us as perfectionists, right? Like sometimes I want you to be strategic and I want you to really think about your next move, your next steps. What could this decision, how could this decision impact everything else in my life, right? I want you to think through all of that stuff. But sis, it don't have to take a whole year, okay? It don't have to take a whole year. It don't have to take a whole decade for you to plan out this strategy and make a decision on whether or not you need to continue on. You need to be the person that scores, right? Like you shoot the ball, you're going to give it a 50-50 chance of whether or not you're going to score, right? Sometimes it takes that. Sometimes it takes stepping out in uncomfortable places, right? Where you don't really know what the outcome is going to be. It's a 50-50 chance that it may be a great outcome, but it's also a chance that it may not be it may not be as well of a good outcome. Okay? It may not be a favorable outcome. But you got to be willing to make that decision. So you're dribbling the ball, you're strategically thinking through like, what is my next step, right? Don't hold the ball too long, right? Like, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna pass it? If you pass the ball, maybe that may mean maybe you need to stop that particular business. Maybe it's time for you to just get out of that business. Maybe it's time for you to pursue another opportunity in your job, or perhaps it may even mean maybe you need to delegate some tasks in your home to other people. Maybe there's a need for you to delegate and to assign some responsibilities so that you can actually write that book or start that business or move up in your position, right? Like whatever it is for you, right? Like we all have different things, but I want you to start thinking about it. Thinking about what are your next steps, but not taking too long to come up with a decision, because in a game of basketball, when you hold that ball, especially when you're just holding the ball, you're not making any movement. You're not taking any action, right? That's still a decision. And eventually, if you hold the ball too long for, again, 3 to 5 seconds, basically what that means is that you could lose possession of the ball. So for some of you, that may mean you losing that window of opportunity may close up for you. That window, that opportunity that may have been open to you may not be present because you've taken too long to make a decision. You've taken too long to think through what are the next steps. And some people, you have, maybe you sat down, maybe you have tried to go through and think things through, right? Maybe you've tried to plan out what is next for you, and maybe something is not working. But I want to ask you, have you taken time to seek counsel from other people? Have you taken time to maybe share it with your friends, share it with someone who you can confide in, maybe somebody who is at a higher level? And I'm saying higher level, meaning they're further than where you are. Maybe there's somebody who maybe they're living their life in a place that you desire to be. Oftentimes, the power comes from. It comes from reaching out for help, reaching out, utilizing your resources. A lot of us have these resources like literally in our back pocket, but we're not using them, right? Like sometimes it may mean just signing up for a course, right? Signing up for a seminar, signing up for a conference, and connecting with other like-minded women who may be in the same position as you, right? And that is still a decision. At least you're making movement, right? Like you're taking action versus just sitting there saying, well, that action plan that I had didn't work, right? Like that didn't really work out for me. So um and I'm tired because I got so much to do, right? So I don't know. I'm just kind of stuck right now. Like we don't want you to be stuck, sis. We want you to move forward. Um I want you to move forward. I want you to get the things that you desire out of life. And again, sometimes it takes you having to stop and evaluate. You're in that position. You stop, you evaluate, like, what do I need to do next? What are my next moves? And why is it important that I make this shift in my life? Oftentimes, what you'll find is that if it's not something that is a good fit, if it's not something that aligns with your values, if it's not something that aligns with your personality, who you are, and really what you desire to have, maybe it's time to shift courses, right? Maybe it's time to make an adjustment or a change somewhere. So anyway, I want you to think about that. And I again thank you all for joining today. For those of you, if you did not hear yet, my book is coming out on my birthday. So January 23rd, my book will be out and I'm excited. I want you to join the virtual book launch party. It's going to be on my birthday. I'll be sending out invites for that. I want you to share it with anybody who you know that may benefit from the book, Boss Moms Move Differently. This is a guide to helping high achieving women redefine motherhood, reprioritize their well-being, and reinvent their lives. So I want you to share with anybody who you feel may benefit from this book. All right, everyone. And I will check in with you all tomorrow because I'm going to cover another chapter of my book. Take care.